Hello, welcome here. My name is Delilah if you are new, and on this channel I share all things motherhood and homemaking. In today's video I really wanted it to be very calm, very relaxing, very peaceful, and I wanted to take you through my week in the kitchen. I wanted to spend some time with you in the kitchen and share with you meals that I'm making and things that I'm doing. Yeah, just spend time together in the kitchen. So every week starts off with a grocery trip, and sometimes I go do it, sometimes we do it together as a family, but a lot of the time Zach is actually the one who goes and does the grocery shopping, just because that's the way our schedules work out between his work and my work, and that's what works best for us. And so today was Monday. I had spent the morning doing homeschool with the kids, and now for the afternoon I'm going to spend my time unpacking groceries, putting them away, and preparing the groceries for the week. Mondays are the days that we have the least amount of food in the fridge. So these are the days that I like to go through my fridge and give it a little bit of a clean, pull out anything that's going bad, and toss out any old leftovers. And then I get to restock. When we get our groceries for the week, I like to always wash anything that needs to be washed right away. I do this all at once. I fill up my sink with water and soap and just wash all my veggies and fruits that need to be washed. I find that if I don't do this, I'm a lot less likely to actually reach for them throughout the week, and then oftentimes they end up going bad. So while those were soaking, I got started on buns for supper. I was making broccoli soup and dinner rolls. This is not a sourdough recipe. This is a quick rise recipe. And this is my favorite go-to for when I am kind of in a pinch and I realized I forgot to feed my starter the night before. This is from my Half-Baked Harvest cookbook, which I can leave linked down below, but this is my go-to recipe when I'm in a pinch. My little helpers were in the kitchen with me today. They've been helping me in the kitchen a lot, especially Eloise. She's been very interested in what I'm doing and the foods that I'm making, and very eager to help, and it's been really fun spending time in the kitchen with her and teaching her the skills that I know. After the veggies and fruits have soaked, I rinse them off and let them air dry for a little while on a towel. And then this is my favorite hack to keep them fresh throughout the week. I put them in a Ziploc bag with a few pieces of paper towel to soak up any remaining water. This prevents the produce from molding and keeps them fresh throughout the week. Actually, it keeps them fresh even longer sometimes. Switching gears to supper, like I said, we're having broccoli soup and buns tonight, so I got started by chopping up my veggies. Usually for soups, I just make it straight from my head with whatever ingredients I've got on hand, so I don't have a recipe for this, but I kind of follow the same few steps in making soup. It's kind of the same thing every time, so because this is a creamier, thicker soup, I wanted the base to be a little bit thicker, so I got started with sauteing veggies like onions and carrots for a little while. I got some garlic in there with some butter. Then I added some flour and then slowly started adding my homemade chicken broth to that. Once all the broth was incorporated, I added some seasonings. I think I did like some mustard powder, salt, and pepper, and then I also added the broccoli and popped a lid on there to let it steam and cook. While that was cooking, I got out my bun dough. I did make a double batch because I also wanted to make some pizza pretzels, or pizza knots, I guess. So I started by dividing my dough, and again, the kids really wanted to help and get involved, so I let them do that. Some of the buns looked a little bit misshapen, but that's okay because they got that experience, and that's so good. Half the dough I made into regular dinner rolls, and the rest of it I rolled out in a sheet, spread some homemade tomato sauce on it because I needed to use this up before it went bad, and then some Parmesan cheese as well. I folded it in half and then cut it into 12 strips. I then took each strip and twisted it and tied it in a knot to make pizza knots. This started off as a garlic knot recipe, which my family really enjoyed, and then Zach said these would be amazing as pizza pretzels or pizza knots. I made them, the family loved them, and now I'm experimenting with different bun dough recipes. These turned out really good. Here I am adding some cheese to the soup and then giving it a taste, adding some salt to give it more flavor. And that's how I make soup. I just kind of throw stuff in and let it simmer and taste and add ingredients until it tastes good. I love to start soups earlier in the day if I can, because I find that the flavor just builds up throughout the day. When my buns came out of the oven, I brushed butter on top, and then these are just like the softest, yummiest buns. They're especially good straight out of the oven, like fresh with some melted butter on top. They're so yummy. And this is a very comforting meal in these final days of winter. Or I guess it's spring in most of the world, but where we live, it's still winter. The cooking does not stop at supper time for me most days. I've usually got another project I'm working on, and today was these pizza knots, which I wanted to try out and was pretty impressed by. And then I also really wanted to try making granola bars, because this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I have stopped buying granola bars from the grocery store to encourage myself to make them from home. So this is me testing out my first ever granola bar recipe. I can leave the recipe link down below. It tasted really good. I can't say that it turned out very good though. But that's all part of the process of being in the kitchen and trying out different recipes. I learn best from my mistakes. And then when a recipe doesn't turn out, I can then take that recipe and tweak it so that it does work for me. I had fed my sourdough starter in the morning, which meant that it was ready for English muffin dough in the evening. This has been one of my favorite things to make lately. I especially love to make this before I go to bed and let it rise overnight, and then in the morning I can make them for breakfast and have fresh English muffins for breakfast, and they're so good. And this recipe is really easy to make. I'm gonna link it down below. I've shared it before, I've made it before, but I finally tweaked it to a point that it works really well for me. So instead of adding 2 cups of flour, I actually add 3 cups of flour. And then in the morning, I add the remaining ingredients, give it a good mix, and then divide it up. And instead of dividing it up into 12 English muffins, I divide it up into 10 English muffins. I think the size is just better and it works better for me, and these are just so good, especially with some butter, some homemade jam. Oh, they're delicious. I actually had them for breakfast this morning, and I'm looking forward to having them again tomorrow. For a while there, I was just dividing my dough by sight or by hand, but lately I've been going back to the weigh scale method. I just like uniformity. I like things to be even, and I'm not always the greatest at estimating things. And so this just ensures that all of the English muffins are going to be the same size, and I prefer it this way. On Sunday, I had pulled out some meat from our meat freezer downstairs. One of those meats happened to be bacon, and I thought this was the perfect time to use it so that we can have English muffin breakfast sandwiches. So while my English muffins were cooking, I got out the bacon and I got that into the oven as well. And as if that wasn't enough for one morning, I also really wanted to try this chocolate sauce recipe that I had recently seen on Instagram, which I think was half a cup of cocoa powder, half a cup of cane sugar, and then 1/3 cup of hot water, and just shake it up, and that's your chocolate sauce. I really wanted to have a mocha with my breakfast sandwich this morning. And so while I was in the kitchen and while I was about to make a coffee, I figured let's just whip up this little chocolate sauce recipe and see how it tastes. It was really good, and it made a really yummy mocha, and William really enjoyed this one. But this will also work to make like hot chocolate or chocolate milk, and I can see this being something that we make on a very regular basis. Even to put on top of ice cream, be really good. Coming back to those granola bars, they had been chilling in the fridge overnight, and so I cut into them, but I was disappointed to find out that they came out quite dry and crumbly. Like I said, they tasted really good, but I've got a lot of tweaking to do before this recipe is perfect for me. After breakfast, I didn't spend a whole lot of time in the kitchen. I don't even remember what we had for supper that day. But that night I was making a brine to brine my chicken so that I could cook it the next day. So for the brine, I never remember the measurements, but it's basically just a bunch of water, a bunch of salt, and a little bit of sugar. And then I stir that until it's completely dissolved and place my chicken inside of there and let it sit in the fridge overnight. Soaking chicken in a salt brine transforms your chicken. Like, it takes it from a dry, roast, boring chicken to this flavorful, moist chicken, and it's so good. So this is my favorite way of cooking chicken. I was really hoping Zach would be able to smoke the chicken today, but he was not able to. So I got it roasting in a pan with some onion, and then I also did a little bit of water in the bottom to help steam the chicken. I just kept it really simple because I knew I wanted to use this chicken for multiple recipes throughout the week. So I didn't want it to have any specific flavor. I wanted it to be pretty basic. So I just popped that in the oven at 350 until it was done. I think it took like an hour, maybe, something like that. But this is my favorite way to cook cheap meals for my family because we source these chickens locally. And because of that, they are cheaper than I find in the store. And then this one chicken is going to feed my family for this meal and at least 2 more meals this week. And that's how it usually is. It for sure feeds us 2 meals, sometimes 3. Going along with our chicken, I'm keeping our meal very simple today, very basic. I am boiling some potatoes, and then I am taking those potatoes after they've been boiled and smashing them. These are smashed potatoes, so I just took a cup and I smashed them down, drizzled some olive oil on top, salt, pepper, I think I did paprika, garlic powder, and onion powder, and got those roasting in the oven until they were crispy. Now we really want to have corn because I want to use corn in future meals this week, but we couldn't find any fresh in store, so we tried frozen and then we tried grilling it. I wouldn't recommend. It wasn't very good. Fresh is way better, but I drizzled it with some salted herb butter, and then we had this on the side with our chicken and our smashed potatoes, and altogether it was good. But again, do not recommend grilling frozen corn. The next day was kind of a really hard day as a mom. It was just very overstimulating. You know, it was one of those days where everything I tried to do just didn't work. It was a very frustrating day. So I wanted to keep my meal very simple. I did not want to spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I wanted something that was just going to be really simple and easy, so I decided to do rice bowls. So I'm going to start off by making some pickled onion. This is one of my family's favorite things to have on sandwiches or on sides, and this is just a really great tangy addition to the bowls that we were having today. while that was doing its quick pickle thing, I got started on the cilantro lime rice. This is really yummy and really easy. I just kind of toast the rice in some butter, then add water and let it cook. And then we'll come back to it later once it's cooked. But for now, I'm gonna get started on the toppings. So again, I want to keep it very simple and I wanted lots of fresh toppings. So I started by grating a carrot and chopping up some lettuce. Then I'm taking some of that chicken that was left over from the day before and chopping that up to add as a topping to these bowls as well. And then I had some homemade mayo that I needed to use up in the fridge, and so with this I'm going to make ranch. Now I don't use a recipe for this. This is kind of just like my quick dipping sauce or sauce recipe. I do half mayo, half yogurt. Both of these are homemade, and then I do some lemon juice and some salt and pepper and sugar and seasonings. For the seasonings today, I believe I used onion powder, garlic powder, dill, and chives. This makes a very delicious dipping sauce for like veggies, a veggie dip, but I wanted to have like a ranch to drizzle on top of these bowls. So I just took this base, this like veggie dip, I put it in a jar, added some milk and gave it a shake just to thin out the sauce a little bit. Coming back to the cilantro lime rice, I'm adding some lime zest, lime juice, and cilantro and salt, giving that all a good mix, and this will be the perfect base for our bowls. Then I remembered I had corn in the fridge from the day before, so I put that on a pan, added some black beans that I had in the freezer, drizzled on some seasonings, I think I did olive oil, salt, pepper, probably some paprika, and just put that into the oven to get crispy. After all the toppings and everything were made, it was time to assemble. These are some of the kids' favorite meals because they get to pick and choose exactly the toppings that they want to have on their bowl. They love being able to design their bowls themselves and choose what they want. I topped mine with some feta, and this combination was so good with the pickled onions and the chicken and the lime. This is also a fun meal to make because you can do any flavor combination under the sun and you can get as creative as you want. Now to use up the rest of the chicken, I wanted to try my hand at homemade chicken pot pie. I have never made my own homemade chicken pot pie. Honestly, it's not one of my family's favorites, and so I wasn't sure how this was gonna go over, but I wanted to have it and I wanted to try it, so I thought let's just see what happens. So I got started by making my pie dough. I did a double recipe so that I could have extra pie dough for future breakfast to make quiche or future desserts to make pie. Having extra dough in the freezer or in the fridge is always nice to have. So this is an all butter pie crust, just very basic pie crust. There's nothing special about it. I hadn't made pie crust in such a long time. I felt like I was almost relearning how to do this, but it turned out well. I'll leave the recipe I used down below, but the recipe that I made gave me 4 pie crusts. 2 of them I was going to use for the chicken pot pie, and then I would have 2 left over in the fridge for later. I actually used one to make quiche, and then I threw another one in the freezer to use later down the road. Another reason I love to make a whole chicken on a very regular basis is because I get to also use the bones that are left over to make bone broth. I just throw all the bones into my slow cooker with an onion and any other veggie scraps or flavors I want to use. I'll fill the pot up with water and then just throw it into my slow cooker for 24 hours and let it do its thing. It's very easy to do, and it's so nice having that bone broth on hand for all the recipes that I make throughout the week. So to make the chicken pot pie filling, I did not use a recipe. I did this completely off the top of my head, and I don't even know if this is technically how you're supposed to do it, But whatever I did, it turned out really good. So I just chopped up some onions and I shredded some carrots and I chopped up my chicken. I got the veggies sauteing in butter in a pan. And once they were soft, I added some flour, kind of like how I did for the broccoli soup at the beginning of this video. And then again, just like I did for the broccoli soup, I'm taking some of that chicken broth and I'm slowly, very slowly mixing it into that flour veggie mixture. This is going to create a nice gravy. I'm not adding too much. I want the texture to be like a thick gravy. Then I also added some cream, and then to that I added my chicken and any seasonings. I think I did salt, pepper, and parsley for this one. I basically just added until it tasted good. Then I went back to my pie crust that had been sitting in the fridge all day. I prepared the base by rolling it out, getting it into my pie pan, and then poking holes in the bottom with a fork. I filled that pie crust with my filling, and then I rolled out another disc of pie dough to go on top. And like I said, I'm very unfamiliar with pie dough. It's not something I've made a lot, or at least not something that I've made recently. It's something I used to make a lot more before I had kids, but for some reason, I don't know, it's like a lost art for me. So it certainly did not look perfect, but it did taste very good. Oh, and never throw away your pie dough. My favorite way to use the scraps is to cut them up into like pie chips and get them on a pan, brush them with some egg wash, and then I like to sprinkle them with some sugar and cinnamon, and then you've got like little sugar cinnamon pie chips, and they're really good and a delicious little snack to go alongside whatever you're eating. Don't judge my pie skills or lack thereof. I know it doesn't look very pretty, but like I said, it was really good. I served this up for my family and I was a little bit nervous to hear what their reaction would be, but they loved it. The kids, it was so cute. They kept saying that I am the best cook, and they couldn't believe that I had made this recipe up, and they were just being so very, very sweet. That's all for today's video. I did not spend a lot of time in the kitchen this week, but even when I'm not very active in the kitchen, I do still make an effort to have homemade meals on the table for my family almost every night. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.